The sporting dynasty has ended. There will be no 7 in a row for the Dublin footballers. They're beaten by Mayo in the most dramatic game at Croke Park on Saturday night. What a game to get into. We're going to talk to Darran O'Sullivan in just a second and get all his analysis about everything that went on. We'll talk as well about the other semi-final, the uncertainty / maybe renewed certainty about everything that's going on there and everything else as well. Later in the show, also, we will speak to Maurice Crosby inside the game and talk about some of the stuff that's going on in the GAA world, including the promotions of the games and whether we're getting enough of it this year. Also, if you enjoy the show, please do subscribe to the channel. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on the podcast, subscribe, leave us a rating, etc., etc. This is GAA Embedded. We're here with you every Monday on Balls.ie, and right now it's time to speak to Darran O'Sullivan. Darran, before we say anything else, I think people will have seen it on our social channels. If they were listening last week, they'll have heard as well. One man and one man only predicted Mayo to not just beat Dublin, but to win the All-Ireland. You're halfway there. Look, I didn't think...
I hope I'm wrong. I'm wrong.
Yeah, exactly. He hopes he's wrong. But I said to myself at halftime, I said, what's this guy on about? O'Sullivan? Will we bother getting him on Monday at all? But proved right at the end.
Yeah, no, I was watching the first half as well, and it was, do you know what? It was just a kind of the way the year had been going for Dublin. They were just about plodding along, doing enough, keeping Mayo at arm's length, and Mayo just looked very un-Mayo-like in terms of their energy was down. Everything was ponderous by him. I was expecting a frantic pace, full-on aggression. They weren't like that. Maybe they'd learnt their lesson. I think they have over previous years, that if you go full on hell for leather straight away against Dublin, come the 50 odd minutes, they take over normally because of their bench. I think it's been well documented their bench isn't as strong as it has been in previous years. But no, look, I think anybody watching that game, the first half, would have thought same old story. Mayo just haven't got enough to get over the line. But Jesus, it was typical of Mayo over the last 10 years, I suppose. Their fight, their heart, their dogged. It's been shown on social media numerous times over the last 24, 48 hours. Darran O'Connor, just going for a nothing ball. And at the time, you think very little of it, only, geez, fair play to him. But that's Mayo. That is Mayo. It's all heart. Just give nothing up. Keep going. And look, they got what they deserved in the end. And to be fair, they could have won by more. They were, come extra time, they were the ones that seemed to have the energy in the legs. And I suppose what caught Dublin was they had been going through the motions up to now. Look, that's not their fault. They were playing poor opposition in Leinster. They were doing just about enough. And when they got asked to up a gear, they just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Now, we all kind of thought that, like, I don't know if hope is the right word, but you know, in terms of looking for competitiveness, there was a sense that maybe Dublin are coming back, but I'm not sure we believed it until we saw it. But it does work both ways. I think we should talk about Dublin, but also just from Mayo's point of view, it's like, this is something we've seen from Mayo a million times. And maybe they're on the wrong end of the ultimate result a good few times. But when you think of the Mayo teams that lost, like, we're talking about Dublin as the best team ever, Mayo bringing them to replays, losing by a point, never giving up. You know, I think Achille O'Connor's score to equalise in the All-Ireland final, a good few years ago now, but this is reflective of Mayo teams, James Horan Mayo teams, whatever way you want to put it, that they do stick in there. And when they did look beaten at half-time, they're the one team that you'd sort of say, geez, I don't know if they're gone yet. Like, you know, it's not like it was maybe when you guys come up against them in 04, 06 when the game was over once they had that bad start, you know?
Yeah, I think this Mayo, this new Mayo, I suppose we call them, but they're not new anymore, started in 2012, where they started bringing a bit more aggression to their game, a bit more doggedness. They went away from just being a footballing team and trying to play it in a nice to watch kind of way. But the thing that stood out to me was, look, we knew they'd have a lot of fight. We knew they'd keep going. But over the previous years, you looked at Andy Moran, Aidan O'Shea, Cillian O'Connor, three big names to do it. Cillian obviously injured, Andy retired, Aidan just wasn't at the races the last day. But it was the other lads who stood up, you know, and I think that's what they've been waiting for a long time, for somebody else or a few other players, because there was a number of them, to stand up and carry the can. And then you come back to your Lee Keegan at the back doing what he's done year after year after year in a new position for him. We would always associate Lee with bombing up the field and doing the attacking side, but he was outstanding the last day. But for me, it was just down to the newer lads. I knew they'd have energy. I knew they have pace. When the shit was about to hit the fan, when they're about to be gone again, would they stand up? And they did. Conroy had a good game. Jeez, laid on the game. When you really want a fella to stand up, he stood up.
Yeah, he was superb, especially the last 5 minutes, then extra time, where he basically won it for them in extra time with those couple of scores. Just on Keegan and, you know, that sort of sense of like there's so much history there. And, you know, Keegan, O'Shea, Henley, you know, Durkin for a lot of it. I'm probably missing a couple, Diarmuid O'Connor. These lads have so much history with this fixture. And I'm just wondering how much that weighs for good or bad. But like even like last year's All-Ireland final, that's a new team that had that got good experience from there. But for these guys, they've been through it with Dublin so many times. How do you keep rising yourself and believing that you can do it when you've been burned so many times? It makes it all the more impressive for me, especially when someone like Lee Keegan, who really stood up and had his best game that I've seen him in 2 or 3 years for someone of his talent. Like,
yeah, and that's what it is. I think that's the most impressive thing about it. You know, after the first half that they had, it was a case of deja vu all over again. We're just not good enough to beat Dublin. And I think it was down to the freshness in the team. Obviously, James Horn has to take massive credit. Like I said, for me, Aidan's a great player. But he wasn't at the races the last year. It wasn't happening for him. But it was a big call because he is one of the players they would have always looked at. He's a leader. And they took him off. It was a massive call.
yeah.
And it paid. It paid off. All of a sudden, it was like the intensity, the speed that they were playing at just went through the roof. And Dublin couldn't live with it. And whatever it is about youth, they have very little fear. They probably don't have the same baggage as some of the older lads that have gone have. And they could see it. Dublin had 10 points at half time. Second half, like it was just unheard of. Like it was a bad day at the office for Dublin. Personally, I think it's been said and it's easy to say it now. It's probably been coming that they were going to start falling into the pack or the pack were going to start climbing up towards them. You don't replace the players that they've replaced with like for like. Now these players will go on to have brilliant careers for Dublin. I've no doubt they'll be back competing in the All-Ireland final next year. But it just doesn't go on forever. And when you needed a bit of fight, when you've won 6 in a row and you have as many medals as they have, and some of them haven't experienced loss before, sometimes you just can't get going, and you can't. It's not like a light switch. You can't just flick it on. And when they had to up it, they just couldn't. And that was what it was. They were outfought. You know, it came down to who wants it more, and you'd be surprised if Dublin wanted it more than Mayo. That Mayo team have so much baggage, and like we said, a lot of them are young lads. They don't have the baggage, but they were supporters in them days as well. They would have seen it, they would have felt it, and they would have been in the crowd. And look, I think that the Mayo fans deserve that day, but they've been here before. They've been here before, big semi-final wins. There's nothing won. So it's about time. They have to get themselves back down to earth now. And right, we have a big game in three and a half weeks.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And look, they've got a bit extra time now. Then I do want to actually address that point briefly, because it's an interesting idea that there's nothing won, because in many ways, Mayo have 1951. They need an All-Ireland. There's no second prize for Mayo at the moment, right? But at the same time, we should celebrate a team ending like a team that's won 6 All-Irelands in a row. It's not just it's like, I don't know whether for Cork beating Kerry in 1997 was quite this, but you know, it's as much a deal for Mayo to beat Dublin on this occasion in this particular team that haven't been beaten in what it was 45 championship matches as it is to kind of go and win that All-Ireland. If they do lose to Kerry or Tyrone in a good performance that they show up for, you know, not once it doesn't kind of go and they feel like the job is done. You have to think of it like this is still a historic moment, you know, and they have to enjoy it as well.
Yeah, look, it's a historic moment. You beat possibly the greatest team of all time, but who remembers it? Who's going to remember that? Oh, we won a semi-final. They've won a lot of semi-finals. Personally, it won't matter. If they don't win the final, who cares who they beat in the semi-final? Genuinely, it's that simple.
Yeah.
I always look back with Talladega Nights. If you're not first or last, what does it matter? Second, third, fourth.
Yeah.
Like the All Irelands, it's one winner, and it doesn't matter how great you are leading up to the final. If you don't win, it doesn't matter. Look, that Dublin team were phenomenal. And that Dublin team changed a lot over the last 6 years as well. And you can't keep going. Well, I don't think you can anyway, keep producing the best all the time. And there's always going to be a lull for a season or two where you have to maybe reinvent yourself, because like it's hard to say that they were getting predictable because people still couldn't stop it. But I think when they needed a bit of off the cuff magic, which they have the players to do, nobody was there to do it.
Yeah.
Before, you'd have had Kevin McMillan come on, and all of a sudden he was just totally different. He was a powerhouse. He'd run straight through you. But they are very structured. Like very rarely I watch a Dublin game and then after you go, Jesus, do you see that point they got from out by the sideline, or do you see a man's outside the boot there, or there's nothing on, they've kind of shot for nothing. They don't do that. They're very structured and calculated in their play. And Mayo stopped that. And all of a sudden then, when they're probably looking around for somebody to do something that off the cuff, which Mayo have in abundance, they go from anywhere, bit of kamikaze stuff. Dublin don't do that, and I think it was lacking, and that comes down to the bench then as well. But look, I think that Dublin, it's hard to say Dublin team, that Dublin set up over the last 5 or 6 years have been phenomenal. The way they kept coming back year after year after year, it's amazing. Like you'd say it'll never be done again. You wouldn't know it. But you have to credit where credit's due. It was always going to come to an end. To be fair, from a neutral point of view, it is great that the one team that pushed them to the pin of their collar for so long was the team to stop it. And I think if you asked the Dublin team if one team was going to stop you winning, who would you like it to be? I don't think they'd like to be anyone, but they'd probably say Mayo.
Yeah. There's definitely a kind of a
respect
satisfaction there, as well as the respect, as you mentioned. Yeah. Look, I don't know if you heard Porco Hora's interview on RT straight after the game, and what was interesting, I think, about it was how emotional he was, and I think that's what a lot of people took out of it. But the one that, when I watched it back, I was thinking, what he's saying is actually very interesting. It's like, we did what we planned to do, we knew what we could, and there was a lot of kind of like very, behind all the emotion was a person here saying, we went out and did a job. We knew what that job was and we completed it. I wonder, is like, they were 10-3 down at one stage. That obviously wasn't part of the plan. But all the things you're saying about Dublin and, not being able to maybe switch on a switch or maybe go through the gears because they haven't had to do it in so long. And they really didn't have to do it all of last year in the Winter Championship either, if you think about it. They were comfortable in every game. They got that early start against Mayo. So I wonder, is this like, are we giving James Horan in a weird way enough credit for that performance? Mayo didn't panic, but also they knew that they probably had that second half in them, that ability to pressure Dublin on the ball, and that Dublin might not have the answers. And I think if you just take from what O'Hara said there and the evidence of what we saw in the 90 minutes or whatever it was of the game, Mayo really did know they were ready to go hell for leather for the last 20, 25 minutes and had something in the tank in the way they didn't have back in December. Yeah,
well, I suppose, look, it's a bit like the Connacht final now, very different oppositions, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the plan. Look, we're going to keep it composed in the first half, keep them at arm length, don't fall too far behind. Second half, we'll go out like maniacs. And that's kind of what they did. And you can't do that for 70 minutes against any team, let alone Dublin. So I would say, because like that, you were watching the team, like, this is so on Mayo, like there was no pace about it, there was no aggression. It was almost like they were holding it, and then bang, we're going to get them here after halftime when they can't regroup. They can't have a proper sit down and structured chat about it. And they'll be a bit starstruck that how do we react to this? We haven't had this in a year and a half. And that's the way it looks now. And maybe we're giving too much credit. Maybe it was just a bad first half and they came out of themselves. But that's the way it looked. It looked like they were holding back, and then bang, and then they exploded. And it is very hard to adjust mid-game. Sorry, not even mid-game, during the mid-second half. Like when when the momentum stopped, with swings, it's very hard to turn around. And like that, you're looking at it. The bigger players, Kieran Kilkenny was good in the first half, I felt, but didn't see any of him in second half. Conor Callahan couldn't switch it on. Dean Rock was reliable as usual, but they're bigger players. They haven't had the greatest year. Look, I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way. They can't be outstanding every year, and they have been for a long time. But when they needed their bigger players to step up and stop the momentum or change the momentum, they couldn't do it. It's just, look, it is what it is. There's going to be a year where it just doesn't go for you, and unfortunately for Dublin, it was this year. But I think credit just has to go to Mayo. I think they got the game plan right. They've showed already this year they're a second half team. Normally they go and they're held for there, but you can't sustain that. So look, experience is key. James Horn's been there for a long time. He knows the players very well, and he knows what they can do. And look, credit where credit's due. Look, obviously it was a very emotional win for him, but it was, like you said, it was tactically very well done.
Yeah, Derek Moore here saying kind of stay in the game, don't panic, stick to the process. Mayo are seriously conditioned, and the Dublin bench pours. It goes along kind of what we've both been saying there. But on the Dublin bench, like there was a point I tweeted it late in the game, Darren, when like it was, I think Dublin were still winning maybe by a point or two, but I just felt like it was getting away from them. And the weirdest thing was, for a team that had won 6 All-Irelands in a row, was I didn't feel like they had the experience on the pitch, because that's when your subs come to the fore. Philly came on maybe last minute. I don't think he was even on at this stage. And you're just thinking, they don't have Cluxton there to calm it down. Comerford didn't do too much wrong. But if you think that last process that went out for the last phase that went out for the 45, you think Cluxton might have just calmed it down a little bit more. That was one of the weirdest passages of play I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen a team concede a 45 like that before. You take other players that like just weren't, there was no Kevin McMenamin, as you said, to come on and charge through and just win a free, or whatever the case may be. And even the likes of someone like Costello is kind of starting now, whereas he's been that guy for them for the last few years. It felt like they were inexperienced, and it's because they were really, there was too many lads who'd never really been in this position before.
Well, that's exactly it. They've never been in this position before. Look, they've obviously had tough games, and they've all been there for the Mayo games. But realistically, when it came down to this time of the game, and when it came down to you need someone to step up, it was the older lads who did it. It was your Cluxtons, it was your Kevin McMenamin, even Paul Mannion there. Paul Mannion would get on any team. No, Paul Mannion. Jack McCaffrey would get on any team. The moments where you need fellas who've been around, like Jack McCaffrey would have bombed on, won a free. Kevin McMenamin would have come on. But look, that's just the way it is. Like, you can't be around forever. Even Philly McMahon coming on, you're bringing on experience, but Philly's been around a long time. But how tuned in is he at the moment? Like I was hearing the last couple of weeks, he was involved with Bows, and they all have a lot going on in their professional and personal lives now as well. Like, so, like, you can't keep going to the well with the same fellas. And we were probably still relying on, if you were looking at Dublin, saying, oh, such and such will come on, but it just doesn't work that way. This has been happening for a couple of years now, that the bench isn't getting the same impact. And that's just the nature of the beast. Like you said, Cormac Costello has been promoted from match winner to starter. And you're probably looking at that game last year going, who would be able to come on here and get a point straight away? He was a bit like Barry John Keane for us, guaranteed a couple of scores when he came on. And that was taken away. And instead of him coming on at that time, you're probably looking to take him off. Look, it's an evolution. They've been in a bit of a transition as well with the amount of players they're losing. They're going to lose more this year. So it's never a straightforward cycle. And look, maybe their style of play needs to change now as well. Like we said earlier, it was very structured. It was very, it's the opposite of high risk. It was very safe and secured. Very little is put up for grabs. At times it can look a bit like the old Barcelona, so people get bored of it or whatever. But I think teams eventually, it took us 6 years, but the teams eventually copped on to how to stop it. And a lot of it is, you protect the D area, they're not going to go for too many shots outside of it. And eventually, if a team's going back and forth enough, and especially against a team like Mayo, who are the best tacklers in the game, they will turn you over. And when you're tracking back then after being turned over, that's when the energy is sapped out of you. And then when they needed that bit of a zip, they didn't have it.
Yeah. I saw they got a point. Paddy Small got a point in the first half. It was a 1-2 with John. They had come from Davy Byrne, I think, just deflecting a long ball in for Mayo, and they broke brilliant. James McCarthy was involved 2 or 3 times. I just watched it again there this morning. I was thinking, like, Dublin don't play like this hardly at all. Do you know what I mean? There was 7 or 8 lads on the overlap. They were on a full sprint. It was a full length of the pitch for score. And it's like they needed to play like that in the second half when they were no longer winning and they weren't trying to kill the game. And it feels like when you've been trying to kill the game for 4 years, because you're always at a lead, it is really tough to just sort of turn it on and play a different way. Like,
yeah, and a lot of it is, like you said, like fellas were bombing on 6 and 7 fellas, and it's great and it looks brilliant, but that takes it out of you as well.
Yeah,
so
of course.
You could be running and being that decoy runner, no one notices, but you're after making a 70-80 yard sprint. So another thing is, because they never played like that, come the last 20 minutes, it was so safe and structured, and they knew exactly where they're going. They probably had the energy like left all the time, because it was a case of you go this time, I go next time. They're able to recover. And then I suppose the myth goes out that they're unbelievably way fitter than everyone else. But a lot of it is because of the structure and the way they played. And they were so organised that they weren't burning silly energy. 6 and 7 of them running off one fella, and next and 6 or 7 of them are kind of gassed and trying to get their breath back and stuff like that. So there's 2 and 4 going like that. And you can't do it all the time. Like, I think I feel a bit stupid talking. I feel like I'm talking down on Dublin. Like, unbelievable champions. What they've done is phenomenal. And look, no team success lasts forever. It was always going to come to an end. You don't replace, we've said it before, Bernard Brogan, Paul Flynn, Cluxton, Keane O'Sullivan. We could name them all. Michael Darran McCall. We could keep naming them. You don't replace like for like, and these lads that are coming in, we're saying they're inexperienced. They could potentially go on. I hope they don't become as good as the lads that they've replaced, or we're all in trouble. But they could go on and have as good a careers as them. But not right now, they're not. But then you look at the bench, someone like Kevin O'Gara there, probably didn't get the credit he deserved. He was a nightmare to come on. Imagine playing 50 or 60 minutes and him coming out like, oh, geez, how am I going to stop this fella? Kevin McMillan. And they were big, physical guys. So, you lose that bit of, obviously, experience, but you lose that bit of strength as well coming off the bench. Physical strength and that's what you need late on in the game when other teams are getting tired.
But I suppose is the question is if Dublin are to come back, is that the end of this team? And I don't mean players. I don't mean like you get rid of Con or Kilkenny or James McCarthy or anyone. But is it the end of like that 6 in a row team, that 8 and 10 or whatever it was, style, way of playing? It's almost like they need a reboot one way or another, if it's with players or not, that maybe that time is gone, even though they were like, Rob Henley missed 45 away from probably winning the game on Saturday.
Yeah, look, I suppose if Desi's come in and he's replaced Jim Gavin, who was amazing, and I suppose the way COVID is, I'm not sure what Desi's style would be, what he'd want to play, but he came in an awkward time. It was a case of, look, if it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. And it was just keep going, keep it simple, because I think if they did try and change things up, it would have been very hard for him. They're very organised in the style, but I'd have no doubt that, like, we're in August now, the league won't start till next January, February, whenever it is. He'll have a good couple of months to get his head around it, start meeting the lads when they go back training, probably December, whatever time it is, that he will start tweaking and putting his own stamp on it. I think with the way the championship has been and with the stoppages and training and stuff, that it's been very hard to do that. So I'd have no doubt that he'll want to put his own stamp on it. You're going to lose a couple of players in that Dublin team. They're around a long time, but the main guys who have been there for the last couple of years, John Small at the back, Kieran Kilkenny, Fenton, Conor Callahan, they're going nowhere. The way James McCarthy is on the field, I couldn't see him going for another year. So they're going to lose a few bodies, but I think the main spine or the main guys in that team will be there again next year, and for a number of years.
Yeah, which is, I suppose, worrying for everyone. Although keeping Dublin relevant but not unbeatable might be the ultimate. That might be what football needs, you know. Comments are flying in. Someone, Ferg, not as positive as you, saying Dublin won't come back from this anytime soon. Gavin was the key to success. GA man, do you think that Jim left at the right time? He saw the downfall coming. Now, they've won All Ireland since Jim left, but you know, maybe there is something in that. Maybe he saw what was coming through. And then the one I just wanted to stop on it briefly is from Mark Fitzpatrick here on Facebook, saying, how about the Dublin indiscipline as the game neared the end? How much of a factor was that? Now, we'll talk about the John Small incident and with McLaughlin, and we'll talk about the referee and everything like that. But Dublin did seem like from maybe, you know, the 60th minute, 65th minute on, to just completely, like, as part of their reaction to the game getting away from them and not being able to get a grip in it, was to seem to completely lose their discipline.
Yeah, and I suppose that comes from not being in that position too often. All of a sudden, things weren't going right for them. The shoe was on the other foot. They were frustrated. A lot of them aren't used to losing, or probably forgotten how to lose. So yeah, it was disappointing to see. I think maybe the referee had something to do with it. I thought he was poor. He left them away with a few bits and pieces that they shouldn't have been left away with. But look, it wasn't good to see. There was moments I seen clips of pinching and just stupid stuff, really. And look, there's nothing worse than seeing a team, especially this team, that were so good and carried themselves so well, going back to resorting to stupid stuff like that. Like, you can be good winners, we have to be good losers, and I've no doubt, look, they would have shook hands with the Mayo lads after the game, wished them well or whatever, but there was a lot of it. It was no need for it. They could have had a lot more fellas on the sideline, to be fair, but look, that's frustration. It gets the better of all of us at different stages, but I think it comes down to they just weren't used to being in that position. They weren't used to not being able to turn it on. All of a sudden, the momentum was the other way and they just couldn't swing it back. Look, it's frustration. It happens. Not good to see, especially from fellas who've won so much. You think they'd probably lose with a bit more grace, but look, it is what it is. When these things don't get punished properly, there's a knock-on effect. More fellas try to get away with it.
Yeah, and I think you're right that possibly Conor Lane did maybe lose the run of things a little bit late in the game, and it was unfortunate, and it all kind of stemmed from that John Small shoulder/not shoulder that, like, you know, look, let's face it, McLaughlin has surgery. He's really, really badly broken jaw. He's going to miss the All-Ireland final. Dublin could have scored a goal out of it. The game didn't stop. There's lots of issues there. And I think everybody reasonably, well, most people anyway, I've heard one or two maybe don't, say that it's a red card now, right? I think the vast majority of people say. I just wonder, though, I watched the game again this morning, and for the second time now, seeing it in full live time as the game is going on, when you don't realize it's about to happen, because you're not aware of the exact second it happens. I felt like live it was a shoulder. Now, obviously, we're wrong, but I just wonder, is too much been made of the referee? It seems to be the main talking point. Like, Dublin are after losing after 6 All-Irelands in a row. Mayo are the team to beat them. It was an amazing football story, and it's like everybody just wants to talk about the referee. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's one of them ones that, look, it looks like a shoulder. My personal opinion is fellas have got so strong. They're so physical now that I don't think that type of shoulder should be allowed. Now, and someone else say, "Oh, you're taking the physicality out of it." Keep the physicality, that's fine. But if you're hitting a fella blind like that and you get it wrong, which is what happened, or you're a couple of inches bigger than him and you connect with it, you have serious injury. Like, and the broken jaw is a serious injury, but look, he'll get over it. It could be way worse than that. My personal opinion is, if someone's running and they can't see you and you're lining him up, and John Small is a big guy, he's a strong guy, and he hits you blind, I don't care if he only gets you in the shoulder, you're in trouble. Yeah, you're getting hurt. And I heard people on about it, oh, to the shoulder, it's too dangerous. Fellas are too strong. Fellas are absolute, like, we've seen it with them, they're machines now. They're all in the gym. It's like being in a car crash that you can't see coming. Personally, I think it should be gone. There's no reason as a defender you can't be there to stand him up or whatever, but it's too dangerous. You're off by a fraction, or you're a bit later, you're a bit earlier, a bit too high. It's too dangerous. It's too serious an injury. I can look, the speed of the game, it looked like a shoulder, but I think it's a bigger issue than that. I just think that whole aligning a fella, like you can't do it in rugby, you know, and personally, I just think it's too dangerous. Other people say, oh, you're taking physicality. There's no problem with physicality, but the angle that they're going at, there's no way you can hit him clean shoulder to shoulder. There's always a chance you're going to get him in the face.
Yeah.
You know, and I just think you have to nip that in the bud, and that's a rules thing. Again, back to rules again, this year will be changing up. But look, personally, I just think when fellas are as strong as they are now and you're hitting a fella blind, you're opening yourself up. So, look, game speed looks like a shoulder, and you're like, oh, what a hit. It's too dangerous for me. You know, and I loved the big hits and stuff, but you just see fellas now, they're too strong. You see it in club games. Fellas are in the gym, especially now with the way it breaks and fellas got big and strong. And everyone wants that big hit, and it's just a recipe for disaster for me.
Yeah, I suppose I wonder, does the fact that it is a red card and you couldn't have any complaints if you do go in anyway slightly high, is that in a way outlawing that type of challenge? Because you can't control whether you do that or not, so it's far too big a risk for the tackler to do it if it is refereed properly, and there is that kind of assumption that I'm just going to look at the ground here for 2 seconds and see that this guy's knocked out and there's blood all over his face, and maybe I'll blow the whistle. And that's where you would have to be critical of laying. And very fast.
You said it there, control. You're not in control. If I'm the one lining you up for a shoulder, I'm not in control of it at all, because you could see me last minute and take a slight move and I'm getting you straight in the face. I just think the control is out. If players are moving too fast or too strong, you get it out. But the fact that he didn't stop the game, whether it was shoulder to shoulder or not, and he got him clean the shoulder, not stopping the game with a fella laid out like that was a joke. You could see the way he fell down, with the way he hit the ground. All it takes is a second look. This fella's on the ground. He's not moving. Like the fact that he left the game, well, it doesn't matter who would nearly got a goal or score. The fact that he never stopped the game was a joke. And he should be brought up for it, because all the other decisions in the game where there should have been black cards and he copped out with yellow cards, who cared about that? Like, this is a fella with a broken jaw, he's going to miss a big game. That's fine, he'll recover. But it could have been way more serious, and he let that game go on with a fella laid out on the ground like that, which was wrong.
Yeah. And his linesman watching it as well. And yeah, so
that's the thing, the linesman watching it, and the linesman, it's not like he's his buddy from the local parish. He's another top referee.
Yeah, Morris Deegan, yeah.
Yeah, and like I have a good time for Morris, and you know, he's a good referee, and but I can't get over it with all the talk of concussion and how serious things that they can see this fella laid out on the ground and they're not buzzing into each other, get the game, get back here quick.
Yeah, Joe. Yeah, dangerous stuff, like really. So
it is, and like it's not John Small's. Look, John Small went for the big hit, which a lot of players do. So I think it's unfair. And there was all these talks about it was an elbow. It wasn't. The elbow lifts after. Yeah. He went for the big hit and he got it wrong. And I'm sure he doesn't want to be going up. You don't want to injure him, but he's going out to leave his mark, all right. So like I think like what he did, like take him out of it, it could be anyone. I don't think he went out to injure him. He went out to give a big hit, a big kind of momentum changing hit. And he got it wrong. So I wouldn't be going hammering tongues on him now, criticizing him. He was doing what a lot of other players would have done as well.
Yeah. Well, that's that. I'm sure we'll hear more about it. And as I said, it has been a huge talking point. I think we probably did it right. I think it was worth talking about after we talked about Mayo and Dublin rather than the main thing. But look, a big thing. Just before we go, Darran, there's been, look, Mayo are there now. It's 3 weeks until the All-Ireland final. We've another week to wait before Kerry and Tyrone. I thought the Kerry statement yesterday was interesting. It was very much, look, we want to play the game. We don't want to walk over. But just remember, this isn't our fault. It's someone else's fault. Yeah. We'll play the game. I kind of thought it was a little bit out of both sides of their mouth. But maybe I can understand the frustration in Kerry because, like, you know, we've won All-Ireland final, the semi-final played before we even knew when the second one was going to be on. We pushed the All-Ireland final out by 2 weeks now. It's a bit of a mess, but I'm not sure what the solutions were other than this.
No, I think that's the thing. There was no other solution for me. I always felt it should have been given them an extra week, and then you put the final back week. Not ideal for anyone, but it is what it is, and they should have made that decision very quickly. And I think Kerry's statement is a case of, look, we want to play it. We don't want to see any team not playing a semi-final. It wouldn't have been great for Kerry anyway, but it isn't our fault. So if one of our boys get COVID, you better look after us as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the way it is. Look, I think Kerry have come out and said, look, we have no problem waiting for him to recover. We want a semi-final. We want to play a Tyrone team as fit and healthy as they can be. But it isn't our fault. We're going along with it. But because the way the case are going, it could happen to Mayo, and the next one it could happen to Kerry, and they're probably saying we want the same leniency if it does happen to either us or Mayo if one of them got to the final or whatever.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. We'll obviously talk more about that game, when it eventually does happen in a couple of weeks. The All-Ireland hurling final gets its weekend on its own anyway, and sure, we'll extend the season by a couple of weeks. Club players might not be happy, but for us watching. Before I let you go, then it was just an interesting weekend in general. I thought that with Offaly and Roscommon in a brilliant under-20 final, it was a really exciting game, but it was also just like interesting to watch these teams up against each other. Even the colours as a match is something that you don't see at Croke Park. And then I know it's a completely different sport, but just in like Meath beating Cork in the women's game, having a different team. It feels like there was a kind of I don't know if Dublin losing set this off or it's all just part of the same story, but it feels like we could be in for a bit of a sort of a configuring of things, and that maybe we could be in for a more open football in general. I know we were talking about like women's under 20s. It's all different, but it felt like one of those weekends where a bit changed, didn't it?
Yeah, it does. And like that, I think like for Offaly, if Michael Dignam's gone in as chairman, I heard might be a good friend of Michael Fennelly. Not that he was getting involved with the Offaly, but he helped with bits and pieces. And sometimes it's just about getting your house in order and setting out a plan, and just even watching the Offaly lads in the games previous to just the style of football they're playing, that's infectious for the rest of the county. Even the lads old, they're going, this is where we want to play. We have footballers to do this. And then it's about being brave and just doing it. And if it doesn't work out, just keep going, keep trying. And like there's bound to be other counties now that are watching Roscommon and Offaly and going, well, if they can do it, so can we. And then it's a case of how do we get the wheels in motion? How do we start? And a lot of it's just patience. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to set this going now slowly but surely. It'll build up, and so it was good to see. It was great to see, and like that, I don't think it was all down to Dublin losing. The empire crumbled and everyone came running out. But no, like that. Look, we all want different things. We want to see more teams getting to the big days, and like, it'll come down to the tiers and the different tiers. And sometimes you need a bit of success to generate more success. And hopefully, I think Offaly now, who had a lean couple of years, football and hurling, had a great year this year in both codes, and look, that'll kick it on. And you just hope that other teams that have struggled in recent years, we start using them as an example as to why they can get back up to the main stage.
Yeah. We'll get you to put your money where your mouth is now next year when it's Dublin and Offaly in the Leinster final and Limerick in the Munster final.
It'll be great. It'll be great.
Darran, thanks so much for brilliant analysis today, and we'll chat to you in a couple of weeks.
Perfect. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks a million as always to Darran. Brilliant stuff as usual. A lot to digest there. God, there's just so much in 170 minutes. It's almost glad that there wasn't another game. But if you're enjoying the show, please do subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Of course, if you're listening on the podcast, please subscribe, leave a rating, leave a comment if you can as well. It's obviously of great help.